Okay, so let's start. We're a little bit behind. Every minute is precious. So just a reminder that this meeting will be recorded and it will be live on YouTube. So at this moment, we will mute everyone's microphone, but the panelists can unmute when it's your time to speak. And audience, feel free to type your comments and questions in the chat box. And we might not be able to answer all the questions, but your questions are very important to us, and we will forward your questions onto the appropriate members here, and we will provide you the answers later. So this meeting will be English only, and the translation can be done afterwards. Okay, so good afternoon and welcome again. My name is Ying Shirley Guo, and I'm the Waterloo Region District School Board teacher and a first-generation immigrant of Chinese descent. On behalf of the Waterloo Region Chinese Canadian Association and its SAR team, so Stop Anti-Asian Racism team, I would like to begin our afternoon by acknowledging that the lands we live and gather today are situated on the lands traditionally used by Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. We're grateful for the abilities to live and work on this land, but we also must acknowledge that racism continues to negatively impact people's life and our community as a whole. Sadly, many COVID-driven racism targeted the Chinese Canadian communities. We have seen and continually see the rise in racism and anti-Asian hate. Now it is at a crisis point. So today, we would like to take this opportunity to have a meaningful and a deep conversation on the topic of Stop Anti-Asian Racism. Joining us in this panel discussion are our special guests, Chanbao Wu, University of Waterloo Professor of Statistics Department, Associate Chair for Research, Vice President of WCCA. The Honorable Bartosz Chagger, the Member of Parliament of Waterloo, Minister of Diversity, Inclusion, and Youth. Mayor Dave Jaworski, City of Waterloo. Mayor Barry Rabanovic, City of Kitchener. Waterloo Region Police Service Detective Constable David Chen. Former Toronto Police Service officer, currently criminal defense lawyer at Bonney and Company, counsel to WCCA, Jake Shen. Dr. Fei Wei, principal architect and partner of Water Fetty's Design Excellence, has won numerous awards, including Canadian Business Excellence Award and more. So welcome again. We will start a conversation shortly. And during the conversation, audiences and panelists' opinions do not necessarily represent the views of WCCA. Now, each panelist, please make an initial statement to our audience. We're going to follow this order. So first will be Ms. Chagger, and then Mayor Jaworski, Mayor Vrabanovic, Constable Chen, Mr. Shen, Dr. Wei, and then Professor Wu. I can put that order in the chat. Okay, so Ms. Chagger, would you like to start?
Excellent, yes. Thank you so much for having me here, Shirley, and all participating. My name is Bartosz Chagger. I am your Member of Parliament in the riding of Waterloo, and I am Canada's Minister of Diversity and Inclusion in Youth, a portfolio that was created in November 2019 because our government acknowledges that racism is real. We've seen that the COVID-19 pandemic has really exposed the inequalities, inequities that exist within our society. The pandemic did not create them, but it has definitely highlighted the importance of doing this work. And in 2019, when I was given this role, I remember a lot of commentary in regards to this being virtue signaling. And I think that's where it's really important that we recognize that these are realities for many Canadians every single day, and it's important that we confront them. And what the pandemic has also demonstrated is the return of the rise of anti-Asian racism. This is not new to Canada. We have seen this before, but we have seen it resurface in in an absolutely horrible way. And when I am talking to constituents, they're telling me about the anxieties they have, not only for themselves, but for their parents or their children, when they're asking their kids to play in the backyard rather than in the front yard, that concerns me, because Canada is supposed to be an inclusive society. And something that we're working towards is actually building back even better and consciously inclusive. It's one thing to say that diversity is our strength. It's another thing for the diversity of our country to feel it. And that's where I just want to say, and you notice that I got really excited to see Sergeant Jake Chen represented, Jake, and Professor Wcca. I don't know you yet, but I look forward to it. But this is the face of the Chinese Canadian community. And I think that's something that we have to do a better job highlighting. And as May approaches as Asian Heritage Month, it's something that I want to work with all of you for. So the last thing I'll just say is a shout out to the WCCA, always taking leadership role in addressing the challenges our country is facing, but also always providing solutions. So I look forward to the constructive conversation. I will be taking notes on pen and paper because I'm older than the internet. And I look forward to learning and finding out how we can support each other in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chager. Mayor Jaworski.
Thank you very much, Shirley. And a big shout out to Minister Chager, as we all know and love her as Bardish, because of the big conference this weekend. We know it's incredibly busy for you. So thank you for making time for your own community, as you always do. Shirley, as an educator, kids really get it. And I was reflecting on this event this morning, and I was thinking about Pink Shirt Day, which is focused on tackling bullying. And it's really is everybody's responsibility to take action, whether you're being bullied, the bully, or more importantly, all the bystanders. And if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. And everybody needs to look in the mirror. We all do, and say, what can we do? And we do that as mayors, and we'll get into that during the Q&A. But in normal years, I normally have a grade 5 council of kids. And I think Barry, he has something as that as well. And you're going to find a lot of similarities between Barry's and I's answers today, because just the Twin Cities are so in tune with each other and looking forward to making progress on so many things. Well, I have this grade 5 council, and parents will ask, why do I do this? And because it is a lot of work and a lot of fun. But I say, I can't change you, but I can change your kids. And your kids, they can change you. And I think that really that this is the long-term answer to a lot of the what we're talking about today. But we'll get into all the short-term things that the cities and municipalities are doing during the Q&A. So thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Thank you. So Mayor Rabanovic.
Thanks, Shirley, and thanks to not only you but everyone at the WCCA for organizing this important event and inviting the City of Kitchener to be part of it. I want to begin by echoing Mayor Dave's comments as well, and thanking Minister Chager, who's done some incredible work in her portfolio on this, for taking time out of what I know is a busy weekend to be part of today's discussion, but also to thank WCCA for not only hosting this important discussion on anti-Asian racism, but in fact, thank you for the incredible work that you've done over the past 13 months as our community has grappled with the impacts of COVID-19. In fact, it's during this pandemic that we've seen this rise in anti-Asian racism. And unfortunately, it's not something that's new to our community or to our country, but it's something that we haven't seen at levels like we're seeing now for some time. It doesn't mean that it didn't exist, but it certainly has percolated to the top, and something that we have to work diligently against together. As a city, over the past 18 months, the City of Kitchener has been doing a lot of work around its commitment to equity and anti-racism work through the launch of the Mayor's Task Force on Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And through that task force, we've come to realize that these are deeply complex issues. They often lead to uncomfortable conversations, but critical conversations that we need to deal with and address in the lives of ourselves as individuals, our organizations, and our institutions. And it's so important that we work to take action against whether it's anti-Asian racism, anti-Black racism, Islamophobia, and other forms of systemic discrimination that exists in our country. Regretfully, over the past year, I think some of that percolated up from south of the border, and some of the things that were being said by leadership in the United States prior to this January, and that certainly has not helped the situation in Canada. But as Canadians, this is something that we need to work on together. And as a city, we're committed to working with you as Asian Heritage Month comes up in May, particularly with the challenges of COVID and gathering, to see how we can support you in celebrating Asian heritage, but also raising awareness about this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to Constable Chen. Wcca, you need to unmute yourself first. Oh, okay. Yeah, Tianhua, can you unmute? Yeah, okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Dave Chen. I am a police officer with the Waterloo Regional Police, currently working in forensic identification. And thank you so much, WCCA, for inviting WRPS and myself to be part of this discussion panel. So just want to state that WRPS has a very strong commitment to fight racism and wanting to work together with all the community organizations, including WCCA, to combat this. Our service has developed many programs, including our Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity Unit, who work with many groups trying to combat racism and building bridge between police and newcomer groups, marginalized groups. We also is in the works of forming a unit called Community Safety and the Wellbeing Branch that is gonna work directly with many groups trying to identify and fight discrimination. So beside being a police officer, speaking as a private citizen, I want to highlight the fact that racism exists. But in daily kind of activities, casual racism is more prevalent. So we know sort of like racism develop in this pattern. We have, initially we'll have unverified selected information, which leads to generalization, and then leads to unchallenged biases and stereotypes, which leads to value judgments and equals casual racism. And then that leads to condoned or excused prejudices, and which can lead to more severe issues such as systematic racism and discrimination. So as citizens, we understand that police can only enforce certain things because we also have to value freedom of speech. So as private citizens, we have to stand up to the casual racism, which doesn't reach the police threshold, to stand up and challenge that, right? To bring these issues to light and so that we can talk about it and challenge it instead of sweep under the rug. Because when you deal with casual racism, sometimes it can be awkward to challenge that. It can be awkward to stand up to that. So if we can work together and encourage each other and empower each other so that we can stand up to these events, that'll be great.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chen, that's great. Yeah, so let's, Ms. Shen, you're next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jake, and I'm currently a criminal defense lawyer. Prior to my current career, I was a police officer, just like David, but I was in a different service, it's Toronto Police Service, for about 8 years. So from my experience, I would say Canada is actually doing quite well compared to probably many other countries when it comes to race harmony and all that. But however, so racism in many situations is invisible, but that does not mean they do not exist. And the opportunity presents itself, for example, currently with the pandemic, the racism will become visible. and can, in some situations, are very visible. And the federal government, the Canadian federal government has long recognized that and actually introduced Section 319 into the criminal code, which gives a clear definition of what hate crime is. And committing the hate crime can actually go to jail for maximum up to 2 years. And also, any criminal offense motivated by bias and hatred can be a aggravating factor when it comes to sentencing. So, for example, criminal harassment or uttering threats, if those offenses are motivated by bias or hatred, when it comes to sentencing, the judge can consider those factors and grant a longer sentence. So I think it's very important for the public to be educated on what is the definition of a hate crime, and so they can report hate crimes to the police. And also police officers also needs to be probably trained up to date with respect to the definition of a hate crime and the judicial interpretation of the elements of the offense. So that is actually a very powerful toolbox that's available to the public to deter hate crime.
Yeah, that's for sure. Education is important. Thanks, Mr. Shen. So Dr. Wei, next.
Well, first of all, thank you, WCCA, to organize this important event. And also my big thanks to Mr. Chaga and the two mayors and my panelists in the during Saturday afternoon and attending this important event. My comment is that the Ontario Human Rights Code prohibits discrimination and harassment on the basis of race, ancestry, citizenship, color, religion, and ethnic background. Although in the past, the race was defined as a natural biological division of human species and based upon physical distinction, including skin color and other bodily feature. But now the biological notion of race has been discredited, as we all know. But the social construction of race remains a potent force in the society as today. The process of social construction of race, as we call racialization, right? So while racist ideology may be openly expressed, but sometimes we also experience that they could be deeply rooted in the attitude, values, and stereotype beliefs. And in some cases, those beliefs are unconsciously maintained by certain individuals and have become deeply embedded in our system and the institution. Therefore, it's very important for us to recognize that the racism is pervasive and complex. And as such part of our society that can be seen as a normal way to dealing with things. And moreover, it's not easy for those who do not experience effects of racism to define the reality. Therefore, it will be both unproductive and damaging to our society if we tolerate the racism. Therefore, the racism and the racial discrimination must be recognized and in order to combat their effects. And I believe at the moment, we do have a racist ideology at an individual level, institution level, and sometimes systematic in our society, just a sad reality. However, according to the Citizenship and Immigration Canada, immigration stimulates Canada growth and prosperity and cultural diversity. Almost 59% of Canadian immigrants, they are the skilled worker and the business immigrants category, and they help fill shortages, our labor market, and also invest in our economy, contributing to the Canada's growth. And so therefore, we must tackle racism head on to build a society to address diversity, equality, and inclusion. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Wei. Yeah, so that's one of the purpose we're doing the panel discussion today is to raise the awareness of racism. Okay, so next will be Professor Wu. He's also the VP of WCCA. And Professor Wu, and go ahead when you're ready.
Thanks, Shelley. One of the major organizers behind this event is the WCCA president, Jung Hu. But unfortunately, she's currently in Shanghai with her alien mother, so she couldn't join this event. So on behalf of Jane, I want to thank all the panelists who take time to participate in this important discussion. In preparation for this event, the WCCA conducted a short survey among its members to collect data on some of the issues and concerns and comments from our members. So I'm going to use the next maybe 4 minutes just show you some of the results from that survey. So I'm going to share my screen here. So the survey is relatively short, connect information on some of the questions we organized. Now, because there's a large fraction of the WCCA members are senior members, so they have issues with language. So the initial survey was written in Chinese, but I'm gonna just show you some of the results very briefly. And we connected 109 responses, and apparently those are volunteer-based surveys, so it doesn't necessarily represent the entire population in the Waterloo region. Among the 109 respondents, the first question we asked is, how long have you been living in Canada? And you see there's 5 categories here. The last 2 is between 20 and 20 years, there's 40 people, and more than 20 years, 45. So that's the majority of the respondent. And the question here is this. So have you ever experienced or witnessed or even heard of racism or race-based hate event? So the first is there's 32 respondents says, yes, I have experienced and witnessed. And 15 said, no, but I know well, my friends had. And 61 said, I don't have personal experience, but I heard of this kind of incidents through the media. There's only 1 says, I never heard of anything. And the next question is, among the racism incidents you experienced or witnessed, are the victims Asian? So 35 answered yes. And 2 said no, and 9 said it involved both Asian and non-Asian. And there's only 1 says, I'm not sure. We also asked those who answered they had experienced this kind of incidents to share their the details on what's going on. And we actually have some very shocking stories from the survey. So if anybody is interested, the survey will be available to share. And the next question is, what's your evaluation on the current status in Canada for the racial discrimination against Chinese? So 17 said there's a systemic racial discrimination against Chinese, and 78 says there's some kind of racial discrimination against Chinese, and 12 says there's no systemic discrimination against Chinese. 2 said, I'm not very familiar with the situation. And then we ask the same question about what's happening in the United States. That is, what's your evaluation about the current status in the United States on racial discrimination against Chinese? 57 said there's a systemic racial discrimination against Chinese. And 28 says there's some kind of discrimination against Chinese. 2 said there's no systematic discrimination. And 22 says, I don't know the situation in the United States. And the next question is, what's your view on the current shooting events in Atlanta? And the first choice of the answers says, this is obviously a racial motivated hate event, 50. And the second says, this is just a regular severe event. And 33 says, I think it's both. And 19 says, I'm not very sure about the situation. The last option, nobody choose, is I don't care. And then question number 8, that is, as a Chinese Canadian living in Canada, and what's your reaction what's your view? Let me say it again. So how would you believe, so we live here, how we should react to the shooting event in Atlanta? So there are 5 choices here. The first choice is we should organize and participate organize the protest against racism. And the second is we should use media to express our views against anti-Asian racism. And 54 respondents says we should use media to express our views against racism towards any race or any ethnicity group. And the next choice with 5 people says we should refrain from any overreactions. And there's 5 other responses. So the next question. So what's your view on the actions being taken by the Canadian government, Canadian organizations in terms of racism and racial discrimination? So we list 5 entities here. So there's you see these 5 bars here. So government, media, companies, non-Chinese Canadians, and Chinese Canadians. So maybe it's a lot easier to see this, but you will see this color represents the percentage of people to 5 possible responses. Okay, so the longest, the one in blue, I believe, is there's not enough attention being taken. The one on the very right is trying to dismiss the issue. The one on the very left is there's an overreaction. So as you can see, the blue part, which is not enough attention being paid, basically dominate every possible category, whether it's government, whether it's media, and whether it's company, Chinese Canadians or non-Chinese Canadians. Yeah. So last 2 questions. Do you believe Canada has the ability to correct its own mistakes and in terms of racial issues and to strengthen the harmony among different ethnic groups? Okay, so the question is, do you believe Canada has the ability? The first choice, I fully believe, 8. And the second choice, I believe, 47. And the third choice is, I don't know, 25. And the fourth one is, I do not believe, 24. And the last one is, I do not believe at all. And the last question I want to show you is the same question you just saw, but this time we ask the situation in the United States. That is, do you believe the United States has the ability to correct its own mistakes on racial issues and to strengthen the harmony among different ethnic groups? So there's 6 possible choices here. The 4 in the middle. So I basically believe, 13. I don't know, 30. And I do not believe, 38. And I do not believe at all, 28. And the very first with a 0 behind, and the very last with a 0 behind. The first is, I fully believe, okay, the US has ability, 0, nobody chooses that. The last one is, I don't care, and nobody chooses that. Now, as I said earlier, this is a volunteer-based survey, so it does not necessarily reflect the full picture in the community. And also, this is only done among the WCCA members. But I believe it provides some kind of a partial picture for the discussion we are going to take. So I'm going to stop here.
Okay, thank you, Professor Wu, for your presentation on the first-hand data from our members. And I think we need to move on to our discussion part. And so now we'll engage these discussions between the panelists and participants. Just so please note, participants' questions may not all be answered due to the time constraints. The panelists have the right not to answer all the questions. WCCA is recording this meeting as mentioned before, and the video will be available upon request. So the SRAR team has collected questions from WCCA members. The panelists will answer the questions first, and the participants can then engage the conversation afterwards. So let's follow this rule. Question 1 is for Mayor Jaworski and Mayor Babanovic and Constable Chen. According to recent data, there have been over 1,000 hate incidents targeting members of Asian Canadian communities over the past years in Canada. Locally, have any of these types of hate incidents been reported to you? What response measures have the City of Kitchener, the City of Waterloo, and the Region of Waterloo Police taken to address these or any other potential incidents? The question is also posted in the chat.
Well, thank you, Shirley, for this question. And, you know, I think what the professor had to say really echoes what I see in our community. We have a lot more work to do. And when I was reflecting on this question, I was thinking, well, where does racism occur? And I think number one, racism is cultivated in social media. And that's why the elected officials that you see here today, we really stand up when we can on anti-racism on social media. And as an example of that, I will say March 21st was the International Day for Elimination of Racism. I know we all were posting videos thanks to Immigration Partnership Waterloo Region. Got several thousand impressions, and I think that's how we can stand out and say that the mayors and MP Chagger, that we just don't stand for racism in our community. Number two, racism takes place everywhere. We've talked about the tragic activities or the tragic events of Atlanta. And at the opening of my March council meeting, I read a statement on behalf of the city, certainly condemning that very hateful crime, and just a complete shame for those families. Number three is racism takes place locally. We know that. Have it been reported to it? Often I will get emails or sometimes via tweets of things that are happening. And it is simply disgusting. And an after the fact item that we can, you know, we want to do better as mayors of leading cities. We hope to make change in our communities to have that great quality of life that we know Waterloo Region can live up to. So as I reflect internally now at the City of Waterloo, look at us, we're a corporation, we're a business, we're an organization here. So there's three ways we can look at it. Number one is our staff composition. We did a diversity survey, and I'm really stealing a lot of Barry's thunder because they've done some of these things a year before us. But a diversity survey where we're looking at how do we match up with the community and how do we make progress on making a better map to the community of our own staff. Number two would be staff training and change, training on bias, training on anti-racism, and again, following the footsteps of City of Kitchener and hiring a diversity and equity team that we're making progress on in 2021. And then three, I would say programming. We support cultural organizations and helping them host community programs in our facilities. And that's part of the way we can do that is to make it a more welcoming community for each and every culture. And then the last one I would highlight is racism takes place in the streets of our community. And so what can we do there? Again, Barry will talk about their neighborhood program, an excellent program of City of Kitchener. And for us, we have a sort of a 3-point plan of building strong neighborhood associations like Laurelwood, one of our long-standing neighborhood associations. I really miss the Easter egg hunt. It's one of the best ones in Waterloo. Number two would be city-led programs where we have neighborhood shout-outs and neighborhood events and really building that cohesiveness of our community right in the neighborhoods, right in the streets of Waterloo. And number three is grants. We have these micro grants that people can do, and there's nothing like food to bring people together. So the Beechwood West One Neighborhood Association brought together everybody and produced a community cultural recipe book, and with funds from that going to the United Way. And you know, you think about all the events that elected officials would go to, the Lunar New Year events that we all miss, and it's really the food that really brings us together. And I think that's how we can help in the long term, focus on anti-racism and bringing us back to the community that we really aspire to be. So thank you. And sorry, Barry, because I know that a lot of this stuff is City of Kitchener stuff as well.
Yeah, I would say so. Thanks, Mayor Jaworski. And I guess, Mayor Verbanica, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit and thank Dave for all of the shout outs and the information that he shared, because there is a lot of things that we are doing in both of our respective communities. Sometimes Waterloo takes a lead and we follow. Sometimes we take the lead and they follow. And it's all about working together collaboratively. I think the important thing, and in the chat, there's a story of a young girl in grade 6 and some of her experience early on during COVID-19. And the reality is, many of us are immigrants in different, we're immigrants at different times in our history, and some are obviously visible minorities, and these issues come out. I remember even as a young child when I came to Canada, even though I wasn't a visible minority, I dealt with some of those issues in my early years because of my name, because my real name was Berislav Verbanovic. And of course, when they got through the list of going through them, of course, children started, picking on you because of it. And the reality is we all have a responsibility, particularly in those young ages when people are impressionable, to actually speak out and to use those as learning opportunities amongst children to get them to understand why this is not okay and how it can be hurtful. But I think particularly for those of us who are community leaders, whether it's as a lawyer, whether it's as a politician, whether it's a leader of an organization like WCCA, when we see these kinds of things playing out in our community, it is so immensely important that we use our voice to speak out and to ensure that we make sure that the community knows this is not okay and that we actually have to do better. And it's one of the things that I'm quite proud of our community, that we actually have a good history of doing that. I'm not proud of the fact that racism still exists and we still have work to do on that front. But the fact that there are many community leaders who are prepared to step out and speak out is so important. And whether it was after the incident in Atlanta, whether it was after the mosque incident in Quebec City with our Muslim community, I mean, there have been countless examples where we've done that, and we need to continue doing that.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Thanks, Mayor Verbanica, and many. I can see the city is doing a lot of things for the communities and people. So, Constable Chen, from the police perspective, do you have any? Would you like to share something?
I just add quickly. So, since September 2020, our service have been notified of 2 specific hate incidents involving Asian community members. And this is according to our emergency operating center. However, 2 does not reflect what's going on. I just want to stress the fact that these are reported incidents, right? So many incidents were not reported. So over the past, I guess, year or so, we have received over 30 hate incidents in total. So 2 of them were Asian related. Again, I think we want to work more with our Asian community, making sure that they are comfortable in terms of reporting. They're comfortable and feel empowered to talk to police about things like this. We want people to talk, because sometimes, especially when media reporting and across Canada, people are talking about Asian community being targeted, and we're only receiving 2. That's a possible underreport. So we'd love to work with WCCA and many other organizations to broadcast this message that WRPS, our police service, cares. So if you experience anything, you can talk to us. And later, I believe in the questions, we can talk about the reporting process.
Yes, thanks, Constable Chen. So is there any like a hotline or anything that they can, like the phone number they can call or website they can go to? I guess you can share that information with us later then.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
No
so Yeah, so we're going to move on to the next pre-selected question. And before that, I actually would like to share a video from a student of WCI. Tianhua, is it okay I share, or you're gonna play the video? Sorry, our technician there. Okay, maybe I'll just share just to save time.
My name is Claire. I'm from Waterloo Collegiate Institute, and I'm representing the Chinese Student Association. For many, the March of 2021 has been a shocking month, especially after the Atlantic shooting. However, I wasn't too surprised because racism has existed for too long, and it's been everywhere. Last June, my friends and I were at Killarney National Park. Upon seeing us, a woman gave us dirty looks, called us COVID, and yelled at us to get out. People may think that racism is a disease, yet COVID can disappear in a few years, but racism will not. Workplaces are reopening and students are going back to school. Acts of racism will only become more common. This is why we need to use our voice in this free country to fight for the rights of all Asians and minorities. After all, silence is violence. If we don't stand up for ourselves now, where and when can we do it?
Thank you. So I hope the video was heard okay, everything. So this is Claire from WCI, and we have second question from the members. It's related to that. So what actions should Asian victims take in response to being harassed in public? Like in the video, Claire mentioned that, either physically or verbally, that would be for any age. So this question is for Mr. Shen and Constable Chen and any other panelists.
So, in my opinion, that when in a highly confrontational situation, things can go sideways very quickly. Situation is always very dynamic and fluid. So I would say in a situation like that, the top priority is to make sure that you're safe and your friends or family members are safe, and to disengage. And of course, if the person is posing harm, an imminent harm to your safety or to your life, of course, then a appropriate physical response may be necessary. But I would say in most cases, I would say to keep in a distance, disengage, and photo taking or video videotaping to preserve evidence, and I would say is probably a good idea. One thing that I've been asked quite often is, like, say, when a person makes a racial slur or making some utterance that is highly unpleasant, and can I punch that person in his or her face? My answer to that is probably no, because if you look at the definition, even the definition under the criminal code with respect to hate crime or a criminal harassment or uttering threats, right? So first of all, a racial slur probably is hurtful emotionally, but it's not necessarily meet the thresholds of a criminal code offense, because a criminal code offense usually requires an element of a threat or physical harm, and a racial slur in many situations may not meet the thresholds. So physical response to racial slur actually may cross the line and get the person, the targets of the racial slur, charged criminally. And that has happened in the past also. So I would say, and also when it comes to self-defense, there are also legal standards. It's not like, okay, I don't like what you're saying, so now I'm entitled to physically respond to what you're saying. The law doesn't play that way. So I would say, back to the situation like that, I would say disengaging, keeping some distance, making sure that you are safe, your family is safe, and videotaping or photo taking to preserve evidence, and reporting it to the authority, I would say would be a better probably option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jake. Just additional to his advice there, prioritize your safety. Your safety is the most important thing. And if you are feeling unsafe, if you are concerned about your immediate health and well-being, call 911, right? Even if you are unable to communicate, the fact that you call 911, our police dispatch is able to send police officers to your location. Most times when your phone calls 911, it gives us a coordinate, right? It gives us a general location, and we can send police officers there. So even if you can't communicate and you're feeling threatened, you're feeling unsafe, 911 is a great option for people. And second is that after you are safe, try to go to a place where there are witnesses, asking them for intervention, and be loud, right? Say, stop what you're doing, stay away from me, right? Don't engage with the perpetrator. Don't engage with that person, because you don't know if that person carries a weapon. If you feel that you're able to get away and you want to report the incident after the fact, we have a non-emergency phone line that people can call. It's 519-570-9777. This line provides people with the opportunity to speak to police afterwards. So it's not emergency anymore. It's not like if you don't come now, someone's gonna get hurt. This is after the fact. People can talk to our dispatcher. And even if the person can't communicate in English very well, we're able to find translators, and we're able to either do in-person translation or over the phone translation. Also, people can email our equity, inclusion, and diversity units. So they are able to do follow-ups as well. So if people wanting to email us, it is at EID, so Echo India Delta, at wrps.on.ca. So, if people contact us to engage with them, we can investigate, provide advice, making referrals, and safety planning, and stopping, this from happening in the future. Also, our local, sorry, just one more is our coalition of Muslim women have started a website called reportinghate.ca. And they are able to provide a wonderful platform for people who are not willing to engage police right away. They can report that online.
Thanks, Constable Chan. Maybe this is something that WCCA can also do, right? Okay, I know time goes really fast. We still have a few special guests to have questions for the panelists. So I hope you can stay. We're just gonna be a few minutes late, if that's okay with you. Yeah. Okay. So so we have a special guest from WCI Chinese Student Association. They have a question. So please unmute. So Claire and Mandy, are you there? Can you unmute? Or Tianhua, could we help? Yeah. Okay. It's
yes,
good.
I'm here. Hello. So this question is for Mayor Jaworski and Mayor, Mayor Rabonovic. So I'm Mandy Lee, a grade 10 student from WCI. And so since the start of the pandemic, the proportion of visible minorities who have encountered a rise in attacks or harassment due to their race, ethnicity, or skin color has tripled compared to the rest of the population, according to a study released by Statistics Canada in July 2020. However, out of the diverse minorities, the highest increase of racism instance was seen among Chinese, Korean, and Southeast Asian individuals. What steps do you plan to take to speed up the reduction of racial discrimination?
Well, thank you very much, Mandy. And you can simply refer to us as Barry and Dave. That's often very easy. And Bardish, we go by that. Barry, do you want to go first this time, or do you want me to go? Oh, I guess Barry's.
I'm good. I was trying to unmute. I'm good. I'm good. Sure, I can respond first. And thank you so much for sharing that. And the statistics that you shared with us are certainly deeply concerning to us. One of the things that Dave and I regularly do is communicate with school board officials, whether it's the director of education, superintendents, as well as the board chair and school board trustees. And so I think, one of the things that, as a result of this conversation today, I'm certainly prepared to do is to have a follow-up discussion with them to see what we can do together to both raise awareness of this and to tackle the issue. I think secondly, it speaks to a broader issue around the fact that there's work to be done in this space in our education system still. And that means actually bringing it into the curriculum and having some of these fundamental, deep conversations with young people at a time when they, in fact, can learn and be impressionable, so that we hopefully in future generations see young people not carrying the kind of racism and hatred from previous generations forward. Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Barry. And that falls in the footsteps of what I mentioned about the grade 5s that we work with, is changing the students so they can change their parents, hopefully, and marginalizing those unfounded racist voices in our community. That's what we work towards. Now, Regional Chair Karen Redmond, she's not here, but as you probably know, the region of Waterloo is comprised of the 3 cities and the 4 townships. And in November, the Anti-Racism Working Group was founded of people with lived experiences, over 70 applicants. And I knew Wcca is, I think, on the line here. I think I saw her in our group of the Coalition of Muslim Women, who Constable Chen spoke of earlier in their initiative. So that's something that, we'll look to that working group of people with real lived experiences who can offer all of us advice on how we can make much more significant progress in the coming years. I think Mandy and that, we all believe we live in a great place. Canada, Ontario, Waterloo region. The reality is we need to make it greater, and that's a priority for certainly Barry and I and Bardish and Karen Redmond. And so we're going to be certainly working hard with our new 2 diversity teams in Kitchener and in Waterloo, as well as this anti-racism group at the regional level.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you for coming here today and for your response. It's extremely helpful, and I definitely believe that education is a really important thing, because a lot of people simply don't have a good understanding of the world, and it causes them to believe in stereotypes and make false assumptions of the whole population. So it's definitely extremely important for everyone to be educated about this issue and understand the full picture. And I believe that the discrimination issue has gotten a bit better in the past few years, actually, because at least we're able to stand here for ourselves, and you've come here to listen to our thoughts and make changes. However, the systematic racism is woven into every political structure, and we've definitely still got a long ways to go, and we've embarked on this journey, and I really wish we don't quit this journey before we reach the destination. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Shirley, can I speak? Can I speak real quick? Claire, I can promise you that at the federal level, under the leadership of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, We are not going to give up. We started this work in 2015 when we were elected. And as much as I can speak for Dave and Barry, we appreciate your thank yous to us. We thank you and Mandy for speaking up, having the courage to share about yourselves, and through the chat moderator, whoever spoke up in regards to their child in grade 6, that takes a lot of courage. And coming from a Asian background myself, we're taught to keep our heads down and just to say, you know what, educate and get even, and that's the way to address this. But we do need to speak up. And part of why we're seeing the numbers actually increase in reporting is because people do have the courage to speak up. And I have to really commend those people who are demonstrating that, you know, anti-Asian racism is real. And what we're dealing with right now in the pandemic, the return of anti-Asian racism, is anti-Chinese racism. And there are people who are being impacted by it. When I saw your video, I got teary-eyed because it reminded me of 9/11 and the fact that the first people who were attacked were people who wore turbans, and my father wears a turban. And it was ignorance, and racism is learned. And, you know, people were saying, well, you need to go out and say that you're not Muslim. That's not the answer. People should not be treated any way less than what people should be treated like. Every one of us is equal. We have a lot to contribute. And unless you're Indigenous, everyone immigrated to Canada, and everyone has helped to build this great nation. And it's going to take all of us to get there. And I just wanted to make, if I can, sorry, Shirley, a couple of comments on my napkin with my notes. In regards to just, you know, in your safety is priority. And I can say that what Constable Chen and Jake Shen have said, like, we should record that and share that with everyone. But just like Mayor Dave said, you know, racism is learned, and it happens in our communities, it happens in our schools, and it happens in our homes. And there are safe places where we can actually call it out and make sure that we're making sure that we're not perpetuating these inequalities. And I'll tell you, as a child of immigrants, sometimes I hear comments around from my family and loved ones that are entirely inappropriate. And as uncomfortable as it is to call them out, I do have one-on-one conversations saying, like, that's not okay. And if you believe that, that's on you. I don't want to hear that kind of, you know, stereotypes and discrimination, because I don't want it to help identify the person or create the person that I am, because I believe in loving all people all the same way. And my Canada is an inclusive Canada. So there are places where you can speak up. When you are in a situation where you are isolated and in your safety is a priority, I think the advice that you've been given is absolutely correct. And I also just wanted to say that federally, we've come out with the anti-racism strategy, and that strategy was created by Canadians for Canadians. And one of the things that came out of it when it was tabled in the House of Commons, it spoke of anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, Islamophobia, as well as anti-Semitism. When I got named Minister of Diversity, Inclusion and Youth in 2019, and I got to write a letter, I added in anti-Asian racism, and that was pre-COVID, because we do see the numbers, because now we're collecting data and we're actually seeing what's taking place so that we can confront these conversations. Very comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations, I am. So please know that I went to WCI, and I'm so proud of you as Vikings speaking up today and creating a space. We also have programs like the Anti-Racism Action Program, as well as the Community Support for Multiculturalism and Anti-Racism Initiatives Program. And one of the programs that we funded is Eliminate Hate, which is collecting data on anti-Asian racism to provide an anonymous and safe reporting environment for Canadians of Asian ancestry based out of Vancouver. And I'm so proud of Constable Chen for calling out the Coalition for Muslim Women right here in the Waterloo region, who's doing similar work. And they're actually doing it to create a consciously more inclusive Canada. So there's tremendous work that we're doing, and forums like this provide us an opportunity to hear that it matters to you, because oftentimes the silent majority is very silent, and people think this is about virtue signaling, but it's not. It's really about lifting up people who have not always had the opportunity, people who have worked so hard. And if we can ensure that we leave the ladder down for the people who come after you, we're going to make sure that we have an even stronger and better Canada for all generations to come. So I look forward to doing that work with you. And I can give a shout out to Mayor Dave and Mayor Mayor Dave and Mayor Barry, because they're people who actually reach out across all levels of government. When it comes to the health and safety of Canadians, it's a shared responsibility, and all of us are working together to really make sure that every individual, every Canadian has that opportunity. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Minister Chagar. We appreciate what you've done for the Asian community. So Claire, do you still have any more questions? Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to move on. Well, no, I know we already kind of over time a little bit. So our special guests, Dr. Wei and Ryan Wan from COCCC. Do you have any questions?
Actually, I have a question for MP Chaga. As we know, the racial discrimination and hate crime are pervasive and unsustainable for the long development of a healthy society of Canada, and will only increase the division between people in a group. Do you think that we as a society has addressing the racism issue enough in our area, or why not? Thank you.
Oh, I'm Tianhua. Can you unmute? Can you give Minister Chaga the right to unmute?
I got the right to unmute. So I would say, Dr. Wei, that I actually think under our federal government right now, we've actually started taking the right steps. And we are doing better at our appointment process, but the systemic issues exist, and the systemic issues are created in a way to ensure that certain segments of the population do not advance. And that's one of the things that I've been pushing for, is actually dismantling our institutions. If we keep using the same recipe and hope for a different outcome, we won't get there. And that's why I'm telling you that the work's not done. We are doing better at bringing diversity in. We are doing better at the intentions of the outcomes to be there. I think most people are allies as to the noun. We need allyship as to the verb. So actually looking at the spaces that we occupy, actually dismantling the systems. If the same 36 people who negotiated Confederation are making our decisions today, then we won't have different outcomes. I come with a background in science, right? So yes, we might change the face of the way we're forming, but if the people are not just empowered but enabled to bring about the change, then we won't have better outcomes. So I actually think federally we have the right approach. I can actually say, as somebody who works with the city of Kitchener and the city of Waterloo, they have the right approach. We are bringing people in. I would say we're all also looking at who's not at the table and how do we have these conversations. Hence, when you have an invitation from the WCCA, and shout out to the COCCC that's also here, because it's about working together, we take the opportunity to have these conversations. But I think we cannot become complacent. So as much as we're hearing the right things, we need to make sure we have the outcomes, and that's why data matters. And I would also give a shout out to Chief Larkin. I think his intentions are genuine. I think the work that they're doing within the Equity Inclusion Office is exactly the right way to go. What we need to do is make sure we know who's informing this decision making. And to hear Constable Chen here today speaking to his lived experiences and the work that he's able to do tells me that he's not just been empowered, but is enabling to bring about the change that we need. So I think we're on the right track. As a child of immigrants, until I know that every individual that looks like us can succeed, I will not be satisfied. So that's why I can tell Claire with full confidence I'm fighting, because we also need to see our faces represented, right? Like today I'm seeing what a professor looks like. I'm seeing what a lawyer looks like. And that's where I think it's really important that we keep showcasing the face of our communities so that generations who come after us or here right now can see that we belong. And that's where I'm working closely with Minister Ng as well as a federal minister to do this work. People say, well, Bardish, you need to lead it. I say, no, well, the Chinese community and the Asian communities need to see all of our faces so that they recognize that they belong at the cabinet table as well. And I think that's why we need to change the face of the Canadian, because all of us here are Canadians. Canada is our country, as was shared in the message. So I can promise you that we have more work to do. We're committed to doing it. And that's why the PM, at the first opportunity he had to call out systemic issues, we did. We're not debating if racism is real anymore or not. We know it exists. What we are debating is what do we do about it and how do we get there? We will change the 36 people, and the PM's not taking anything away from those 36 people who were negotiating Confederation. We're creating more space. So let's bring more people in. Let's do this together and get to exactly where we're trying to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's very encouraging. So, Mr. Wan from COCCC, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Hello, everybody. This is a question I think, hello, that anybody can try to answer. I know, thankfully, we have all this social media, these new programs, these new outlets, medias that us or people of other ethnicities can report to or share their experiences of racism, that's great. I know the anti-racism strategy that you promoted has probably addressed this as well as some of our local programs. But I just wanted to ask, the same sort of social media or other medias and other communications are also spreading, communicating, or sharing their own stories, encouraging others to commit on these acts or share false stories. What can we do to combat these issues?
Go ahead.
Thanks,
Eric.
thanks, Shirley, and thanks for the question. I will tell you one of the things that I've started doing a couple things. Number one is as soon as I see anybody who's actually spreading negativity, hate, things against women, quite frankly, I've done it with people who have posted stuff with respect to Bardish and some of the other female cabinet ministers, both provincially and federally, as well as local officials. As soon as I see it, I actually report it to Twitter and Facebook, and some of those people have actually had their privileges suspended for a while as a result of that. I also block those people because, quite frankly, I don't need to see that garbage on my feed. It's important to be aware of it. And we find out about it, but certainly I think it's so important for all of us. Social media can be a really positive tool, but it's become negative, and because of some of this stuff. And the only way we're going to actually change that is if we collectively start becoming more vocal with Twitter, with Facebook, and so on, and say, this is not okay, you got to change it. And they are learning and they're responding, quite frankly.
Thank you. Great. So there's a lot of encouraging words, and a lot of programs are on the way. So that is positive thing that we can see that. And so now we're near the end of the discussion. So there was a general agreement among the panelists that the right response to the racism and racial discrimination is to promote inclusion, unity, and we all respect for individuals' diversity. So all panelists, thank you for taking the time to participate in this panel discussion. Your perspectives and comments are really enlightening and encouraging. Thanks to all the audience members today for your time participating this meaningful discussion. I also wanted to thank to WCCA and SAR team for organizing this event. So discussions don't need to stop just because the panel is over. So members, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact our SAR team. The contact information can be found on our website, WCCA.com. So I would like to say thank you again. Have a great day, and there are more questions for sure. We will try our best and then to answer these questions after this meeting. So the meeting now is dismissed, and then thanks to all the panelists again for being here, for your time, for your great encouragement and everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, WCCA.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.